Hello YouTube, I'm Drominicus and this is Thorsday. And today on the show I'm going to be taking a look at an as yet untouched pantheon in my series, and that is the Hindu pantheon. And today I'm going to be taking a look at the goddess Kali. And I gotta say, looking at what I've found, there are a few misconceptions that I'm going to lay to rest here, or at least attempt to do so. And it's some pretty interesting stuff, so stay tuned. The name Kali actually comes from the feminized form of the Sanskrit word Kala, which, depending on where you look, means time. Now, her name does, in fact, mean she who is black or she who is death. Now, the death part of the name doesn't really describe exactly what she is, and I'll discuss that a little bit later on. However, she who is black most certainly does describe her as, in her depictions, which I'll show you in a little bit here, do show her as black-skinned. The depiction of Kali is fairly consistent across the board. Now, as mentioned in the section on her name, she is in fact black-skinned. Now, sometimes it is a dark blue, but it is really rather dark skin. In addition to that, she does have forearms, one of which is holding a sword, two of which are open and empty, and the other holding a severed head. Depending on where you look, it could be that of a human or a demon. Now, in addition to this, she has 3 eyes and a longer tongue. She's mostly nude, with a corset being pretty much the only bit of clothing that she's wearing. And she has a garland of human skulls around her neck, as well as a garland of human arms that are severed just around the elbow. Now, being that she does have human parts, you would think, okay, she's definitely a goddess of death, but again, as discussed earlier, I'm going to try to steer you away from that, because that's not what I've been finding in my research, that she's not really a goddess of death, per se. Now, in addition to this as part of her depiction, she is most often shown with 1 foot on top of her consort or husband, Shiva. And the reason for this I will show you in the mythos section. So yes, that's pretty much how Kali is more often than not depicted. Basically on a battlefield with 1 foot on Shiva, her forearms up, with a severed head, sword, and all that good stuff there. So yes, that's pretty much what she looks like in basically every depiction I've seen of her. As Kali is part of the Hindu pantheon, she is worshipped primarily in the Indian subcontinent. Now, this said, she's not tied to any one particular location as Athena is to Athens, but there are several locations that worship her more than others, and I will discuss this a little bit later in my worshipper section. So in this section, I'm not going to be taking a look at symbols that somebody might carry around to represent their devotion to Kali. Rather, I'm going to be taking a look at the symbolic meaning behind her depictions. So, her name means she who is death and she who is black. Now, I'm going to try in this section to really put to rest the she who is death part, because honestly, she's not exactly a death goddess. She is more of a creation and destruction, but not in a bad way, if that makes any sense to you. So we're going to start out with the she who is black with her black skin. So her black skin is representative of basically a feature of being all-encompassing. Now, when you think about it, it kind of makes sense that that would be the quality represented by black skin, because when you take, for example, a palette of paint, okay? You have all these different colors, you paint your canvas, and then you paint all of the paint over each other, so you have all these paints together, mixing to create black, or off black. But still, that's what it is. It's basically a return of all things to Kali. So that's essentially what her black skin represents. It's an all-encompassing quality. Everything returns to her. Everything comes from her. It's a cyclical sort of deal. Now, the second thing is her garland of skulls. And you might be thinking, okay, how is that not a morbid, death-related thing? Well, there are 50 skulls. And although they may not seem significant, they are representative of the 50 letters in the Sanskrit alphabet. And that is more representative of knowledge and wisdom and that sort of thing, rather than death. Third is the severed arms. And at this point you're thinking, okay, Drominicus, what the hell are you going to tell me that's going to convince me that this is not death? And I would tell you that it's actually representative of a transition. And much like the Death Tarot card, which many people confuse for actual death and bad things, it is just a transition. So in this case, it's transitioning a person from, or liberating a person from, the mortal coil into the spiritual realm. So it's basically Kali's trophies of her liberation. It's not anything morbid, it's just saying that yes, she does bring somebody from the mortal into the spiritual, and that's basically what they represent. It's not actually that bad, really. Now the fourth is her three eyes. So her three eyes are representative of the three phases of time: the past, the present, and the future. And being that her name is derived from the feminized form of Kala, meaning time, it just makes sense. That's basically what it is. So she's got past, present, and future. She's got transition from mortal into spiritual. She has the Sanskrit alphabet, and she has all-encompassing. So really, there's not really any death there. I mean, you could kind of say that the transition is death-like, but she's not really a goddess of death. So yeah, she's actually a pretty compassionate goddess, from what I've read, although she also has a lot of rage issues sometimes in one of her myths, but I'll discuss that a little bit later. So there you go. Those are her symbols as shown in her depictions. Although Kali has been attributed with several domains throughout everything that I've read, the main ones that I've been able to pick out have been time, destruction, and creation. Although, most recently, she has been attributed with the domain of motherly love, which may seem a little bit paradoxical given her history, but that is what I've seen so far. When it comes down to the worship of Kali, one need not look any further than the Kali Ghat in Kolkata. Now, the Kali Ghat is a temple dedicated to the worship of Kali, and it is on one of 51 sacred sites known as the Shakti Pitha. Now, the Shakti Pitha are sites whereupon it is said that the ashes of Shakti fell down to the earth, and these are scattered all throughout the Indian subcontinent. And another interesting little fact about the Kali Ghat is that it is, depending on where you look, said to have been the origin of the name of the city of Kolkata. So as far as mythos is concerned with Kali, the main myth that I was able to find that is the most popular one is that of her origin. Now, what happens in this myth is that Durga, a god, and several other gods go out to try and kill a demon that is destroying everything, and that demon is Raktabija. Now, Raktabija, what happens is that when they wound him, every drop of his blood that hits the ground turns into another clone of himself. So essentially, by the end of it, they're fighting a whole field full of him. So, depending on where you look, Durga either creates or turns into Kali, and ends up not slicing and hacking, rather eating all of the Raktabija that are there, all of the clones and the original, so that none of their blood hits the ground. Kind of a clever way of doing it. So, in the end of it, Raktabija is defeated, and Kali ends up going on a bit of a frenzy of destruction. Now, in order to stop this destruction, Shiva, her husband and consort, throws himself in front of her to try and quell her rage, and is successful. And that's why a lot of the times in the depictions you will see her with her foot on Shiva, and her tongue lolling, and her face a bit of an expression of surprise, because she just sort of was a little bit surprised by what happened, that she went on a rage and whatnot. So yes, that's essentially the main myth I was able to find about her. So there you go. That's Kali in a nutshell. Again, there's a lot of different things about the Hindu religion that you need to take a look at. For sure, I would urge you to take a look, because there's some really interesting concepts and whatnot involved in there. But yes, this is basically Kali in a nutshell. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and stay tuned for my other episodes of various things this week. So thank you very much. I'm Drominicus, and I'm out.